So, when your body faces a threat, anything from a tiny paper cut to a serious infection, it doesn't just react. It unleashes this incredibly coordinated chemical response. Today, we're going to decode that response. We're going to dive into the world of these tiny messengers, the inflammatory mediators, that basically act as the body's own emergency broadcast system.
All right, here's our game plan. We'll start with the basics of these chemical signals, then meet the first responders who are always ready to go. After that, we'll check out the on-demand crew built for specific jobs, introduce the master regulators running the whole show, and finally, see how it all clicks together in this amazing interconnected cascade. Let's get started.
Okay, first up, the chemical signals. Let's set the scene. A simple, everyday injury kicks off this biological process that is just mind-blowingly complex. And it all starts with these signals.
I mean, you knew the feeling, right? The little sting, the redness, maybe a bit of swelling. But what is really going on under the surface? What are those invisible messages flying between your cells to manage this little crisis? Well, that's exactly what we're talking about.
The official name for these messengers is inflammatory mediator. And honestly, thinking of them as emergency text messages is a perfect analogy. They're short, direct messages sent from one cell to another, saying stuff like, hey, we've got danger here, open up the blood vessels, or we need backup at these coordinates right now.
So the body uses two main strategies for this. On one side, you have pre-formed mediators. Think of these like fire alarms already installed in the walls of your cells, just waiting to be pulled. They go off instantly. On the other side, you've got newly synthesized mediators. These are more like a custom emergency plan, created right on the spot to deal with the specifics of the threat. One's the rapid alarm, the other is the strategic response.
All right, let's meet those first responders. These are the ones that kick down the door. They're pre-packaged and stored inside specialized guard cells, just waiting for a trigger so they can be released and sound that first, absolutely crucial alarm.
And the most famous of these is, of course, histamine. It's stored in those guard cells we mentioned, like mast cells and basophils. When it gets released, it's like firing a flare gun into the air. It instantly tells the blood vessels in the area to get wider. That's vasodilation, and it's what causes the redness you see. It also makes those vessels kind of leaky, which causes swelling. But that leakiness isn't a bug, it's a feature. It creates these tiny gaps in the vessel walls, basically opening up exit ramps for other immune cells to get out of the bloodstream and into the tissue where the fight is happening.
So, the initial flare is up, the alarm has been sounded, now the body starts to assess the situation and builds a more tailored response. This is where the on-demand crew comes into play.
Now check this out. This table shows a really key family of these on-demand mediators, and they all come from something called arachidonic acid, and you can see they have different jobs. Leukotrienes, for example, call in specific immune cells like neutrophils. Thromboxanes are all about clotting. But look at prostaglandins. They help with vasodilation, but, and this is huge, they're also involved in signaling pain. So have you ever wondered how an NSAID like ibuprofen actually stops the pain? It works right here. It blocks the chemical factory that makes these pain-causing prostaglandins. It's a really targeted strike.
And also in this on-demand group, we can't forget platelet activating factor, or PAF. Yeah, it helps with clotting, but it's also a powerful chemical signpost, especially for a type of cell called an eosinophil, which you see a lot in allergic reactions, telling them exactly where they need to go.
So we've got the first alarms. We've got the on-demand crews. But who's in charge? Who's coordinating all of this to make sure it's actually effective and doesn't just spiral out of control? Well, that's where the master regulators come in.
These regulators are called cytokines, and if histamine is the flare gun, cytokines are the commands coming down from headquarters. They don't just act locally, they can have system-wide effects. We're talking commands like tell the brain to start a fever. They're the ones issuing the big strategic orders that shape the entire immune response.
And they have a whole playbook of different commands. You've got pro-inflammatory cytokines that basically shout full steam ahead to fuel the fight. You have specialists for things like allergies. And crucially, you also have cytokines that give the stand-down order to prevent friendly fire and calm things down. Some can even order the bone marrow to start making more troops, brand new immune cells to send to the front lines.
Now, within this big cytokine family, there's a special group called chemokines. The easiest way to think about them is as the GPS of the immune system. They create this chemical trail like breadcrumbs that literally guides migrating immune cells directly to the site of the problem. This is so critical, in fact, that some viruses, like HIV, have actually evolved to hijack these chemokine receptors to get inside our cells.
All right, it's time for the final piece of the puzzle. You see, none of these systems work in a vacuum. They are deeply, and I think beautifully, interconnected. They're often triggered in a cascade, where one event just perfectly sets off the next. So let's look at one of these cascades, the kinin system. It all starts when a protein that's always just floating around in your blood, called Hageman factor, bumps into a damaged vessel wall. That contact activates it. This kicks off a chain reaction that ends up producing a molecule called bradykinin. And guess what bradykinin does? It causes vasodilation, leaky vessels, and it's a very powerful stimulator of pain. Sound familiar? Now, hold that thought, and let's look at another system that runs in parallel, the clotting system. Its job is to form a physical plug to seal the injury. And just look at the very first step. It's triggered by the exact same thing, the activation of that same Hageman factor. This sets off its own cascade, ending in the formation of a fibrin clot. And here it is. This is the crucial point, the elegant design in all of this. The body is just so incredibly efficient. That one single event, damage to a blood vessel, activates one trigger, Hageman factor, which simultaneously launches two essential programs. One that calls for help and causes pain to let you know something's wrong, and another that starts physically sealing the breach. It's a brilliant 2-for-1 response. And that's really the big takeaway here. The inflammatory response isn't chaos. It isn't just a random soup of chemicals sloshing around. It's an elegant, highly evolved communication network, with signals, commanders, and feedback loops all working together to protect you.
Which, leads us to a final thought. We've really just scratched the surface of this incredibly complex chemical language. But as we get better and better at understanding it, just imagine the possibilities. What if we could develop therapies that don't just bluntly shut down inflammation, but instead act like precise translators, turning down a single pain signal or boosting a specific stand-down command? I mean, that level of control could literally revolutionize how we treat everything from allergies to autoimmune disease. The future of medicine might just be written in the language of these mediators.